Hi everyone, happy Friday. I'm really excited today. I'm going to get to speak to local author Jennifer DeLeon, and this is going to be really good. I'm nice and rested for it too. I went to bed at 6:45 last night. I think I was extra tired because I didn't sleep very well the night before after having my second vaccine. So as soon as Jen jumps on here, we will get started. I hope everyone's having a great Friday. The weather's been so nice. It's been great to get outside a little bit. Got a couple people joining us now. Hi. Jennifer will be joining in just a minute. And as I was saying, here she is. Okay, Jennifer, I'm going to just send you an invite. There we go. Sent. We'll just wait for Jennifer to jump on. There she is. Hi.
Hi. How are you?
Good. How are you? I'm so excited for this conversation.
Oh, yeah, me too. I could talk about this all day.
Yeah. So let me introduce you, and then I'm going to pass it over, and you can share a little bit more about yourself, and we'll get started. Sure. So Jennifer DeLeon is a local author. She wrote the young adult novel, Don't Ask Me Where I'm From. And if I'm correct, released today is her most recent book, White Space, Essays on Culture, Race, and Writing. And I'm so excited to hear about that and have her read a little bit from that. She's an instructor and board director at the GrubStreet Creative Writing Center, and assistant professor in creative writing at Framingham State University, and a faculty member in the MFA in Creative Nonfiction program at Bay Path University. So I'm going to pass it over to Jen and have her share a little bit more about her background and, what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Amy, for inviting me. This is so fun and special. As you're right, today is the official launch day, pub day for White Space. I know, I can't believe it. Yeah, we had a big launch event last night. And today it's like just continuing. I have another event tonight and for the next few weeks. So I'm
I bet you're very busy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Always busy. So just to give you a little bit of background information on me, I have always loved writing, and I've been writing forever. But I didn't really pursue writing professionally until my late 20s. I never really saw myself reflected in a lot of the books that I read. I didn't know any writers. I had no clue how to become an author. So it was kind of a long journey, but well worth it, because now I feel like my full self, like my real whole self, and
Wonderful.
Yeah. So I'm really thrilled about that. And I teach writing. I'm always learning, always reading, and I just love doing these kinds of events. So thank you again. And my debut novel, Don't Ask Me Where I'm From, is fiction, right? It's a novel for teens, but anybody can read it. But White Space is a collection.
It's great, by the way. It's a great. I read it. We read it as part of my book club, and even though it's a YA novel, I mean, it's fascinating, and it's really great in terms of cultural perspective, and it's just a great story.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah, I feel like it's like, okay, here's my firstborn, and it's like now I got to make room for the second baby. But White Space is different because it's nonfiction, so it's very personal. They're personal essays. They're all true. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like giving someone my journal to read, in terms of content, not in terms of form, because I revise the essays, and a lot of people ask me like, oh my God, how could you write this during the pandemic? And I absolutely did not write this during the pandemic. I wrote it over the last 10 years. I just really kind of worked on essays and published them here and there. And then eventually I realized I had a collection and started to edit the book in that way. Like, what needs to be taken out? What essays are still needed to make it a whole? And the timing just worked out that both the books were published during a global pandemic. So lucky me. But this particular book is about, the essays are about me kind of being in different white spaces, from a child to a teenager to college to in my 20s and even 30s. and kind of navigating those spaces. But it's also about the white space of the page and kind of filling up that space, claiming ownership over it, you know, and writing my stories and publishing my stories. So the book also shares a lot about my path to becoming an author. And I really pull the curtain back and kind of share the good, the bad, and the ugly, because I wanted a book like this. You know, it's like I wanted to be able to read something where I'm like, tell me, what is it really like? And the thing about white spaces is that a lot of times, you know, the focus can be on race, it can be on language, it can be on class differences, right? When we sort of think about whiteness, like that's what comes to mind. But one area that I think isn't explored as much, or maybe it is, and I just don't have access to a lot of these conversations, but is the kind of intersectionality of being a woman of color in a white space, but in terms of body image,
Absolutely.
food, nutrition, BMI, you know, and so all of these concerns and issues came up for me when I was growing up in a predominantly white town, and especially when I went to college and beyond. I just felt like this never was a thought on a literal level, like I want to fit in, I want to be like all the other girls, right? It wasn't like a conscious.
No, it's a normal developmental stage or process, right? Through adolescence, when there's a natural desire to fit, and we have that as humans, right? A desire to belong.
Exactly. And so I couldn't like pin down the language. But I certainly was wrestling with these issues, and from as young as 5th, 6th grade, you know, and thinking like, you know, why is my body curvier and different than the other girls? And, you know, food was like a huge just piece of my identity and growing up and wanting to fit in, and also the relationship even with my mother. I mean, I teach writing all the time, and I swear when I give a writing prompt around food, it's like all the stories pour out. It's amazing. So I was kind of like, you know what, this was always something that was private. Like I never really shared this with anybody. I didn't talk about it with anybody. Again, I didn't have the language for it, like body dysmorphia. Like when I was 12, I didn't know what that was. And when I was, you know, engaging in kind of just unhealthy patterns of exercise and hiding food, overeating, all of that, I kind of, you know, realized it wasn't healthy, but I didn't know what to do about it. I didn't know sort of the alternative. Anyway, so that's
and you know, I just want to echo what you're speaking to, in the sense that what we're fed from a very early age is a certain body type that is idealized in our culture, and everyone is getting this, right? And it's based on a very thin white ideal. And you know, when I was just talking to a group of 8th to 10th graders earlier in a Zoom conversation, we were talking about diet culture, talking about body image, and you know, we talked about how universal this is, particularly for women. And I think if you're growing up in a predominantly white culture where you're seeing different bodies, like bodies that don't look like yours, and you're getting that message reinforced that, yeah, that's the right body. You know, it's so natural to start feeling like you need to change your body. And it's great that you can speak to this and provide, you know, it sounds like what you're hoping to provide with this book is a resource for people that maybe like you, young writers that want to make a way for themselves in this space, and also that you were really vulnerable and opening up, and as you said, pulling back the curtain in this particular book, which I'm really curious to hear how that feels for you, and if it's like giving birth on a whole nother level.
It totally is. You know, and I was kind of talking about this in last night's event, but it's like when you write personal essays, it is this dichotomy of like, read it, no, don't read it, don't read it, no, don't, you know, it's but now it's out in the world as of today, and people have received their copies a little early, and so some people have read the whole thing, some have started to read it, and it's really cool to hear feedback, because a lot of it is like, oh, I can so relate to that. Or I didn't know that you went through this. Like, you know, it's just, so there's lots of emotions attached to it. But I would love for, oh my goodness, for my younger self, but all of those like versions of my younger self, like young people to read it, even women in their 20s and 30s to read it and understand that the idea of identity formation and being in white spaces can manifest itself in these other ways of, you know, kind of wrestling with food and body image and exercise.
Yeah. So I would love for you to read a piece. I mean, is there one that you felt would be really apropos for our readers, our listeners? Yeah.
Definitely. So I wanted to share too that the book is structured around a trip to Guatemala that I took in my late 20s when I was kind of lost in figuring out like, what's my next step? So the book is in 3 parts. It's before Guatemala, in Guatemala, after Guatemala.
Okay.
And so I'm going to read part of an essay in the 3rd section, so after Guatemala. But, you know, a lot of the essays overlap. But basically, this piece in particular, it's called Gyms. And I thought it's like so exactly what we're talking about today. And I should mention that for a while in my 20s, I traveled a lot. And every place I traveled to, I was like desperate to find a gym. And it became a kind of like obsession. And I mean, I studied abroad in Vietnam. I needed a gym there. I studied an internship in Lagos, Nigeria. And I was like, I need to find a gym in Lagos, Nigeria.
That really puts our like culture around fitness and diet and wellness in perspective when you think about going to Vietnam and looking for a gym.
Yeah, I know. And in Paris, I mean, Guatemala, Boston, you know, I was like gym girl, and it was more like, it was deeper. It always is deeper, right?
Yeah.
Like, I really want to go on the treadmill. Like, you know, it was like I was yearning for something. And so in the essay, I explore the kinds of different gyms that I've, you know, searched for. And it's so interesting because you're right. Like, our perception of going to the gym and fitness is very Western. It's like the United States, it's a huge part of our culture and marketplace.
How we look at movement, moving the body, like, you know, this need for it to be very formal and, you know, defined, right?
Yeah. And, you know, so when I went to the gym in Paris, there were lots of women there, but it wasn't this like obsessive thing, like counting calories. And, you know, they did it because it made them feel good. And they would shower afterwards and, you know, go out into the world. And it had this different aura.
I think it had some joy in it. Like, you felt like they actually were really like celebrating their bodies, like connecting with their bodies and then moving on with their lives. And it didn't feel like compulsive or like something that was ritualized in the way that it can be.
Absolutely. Even in the locker room, there weren't these separate little stalls. Like, don't look at my body. You know, it was this like kind of big square room with shower heads at different like intervals. And they would just like strip down and shower. Like,
that's what I envision around like French women, is that there's a lot more less inhibition and a lot more sense of like openness around body and different types of bodies. And
yeah, so even the gym locker room was different. And then in Nigeria, I remember so I was doing an internship at the United Nations, and I had coworkers there who were like, don't work out too much. You know, you don't want to lose your bum. You know, you don't want to lose your bottom. And I'm like, oh, that's exactly what I want to do. You know?
And again, the focus on female appearance becomes center stage, right? Like, how you look is the most important thing. Like, gosh, God forbid,
And but they were just like, no, girl.
But it's also different kinds of maybe cultural norms or what's esteemed in different cultures in terms of like body type. And that's a really good point. Yeah,
exactly. And then you consider access and just the mere fact of having excess to burn. You know, like when I was in Vietnam, it was really like every time I tried to jog outside, like people would point at me and laugh, and there would be like these Vietnamese women in the conical hats with like blackened teeth, these older women that were like so cute, and they would like point at me and crack up, and I'm like, this doesn't make me feel good. So
Well, right. So when you say access, my sense is that you're describing like a culture of people that maybe couldn't even get enough food,
yes,
and then to think about having extra energy to use on additional movement, additional activity in the body, it was novel. This is kind of odd thing for them. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then you felt like it was sounds like you had a real internal kind of awakening or aha moment around like, oh wait, this is a very privileged thing to just kind of have this extra energy to burn through more formalized exercise. Yeah, that's interesting.
That's exactly right. Yeah, it's a privilege to have access to burn. That's exactly it. And it was the same in Guatemala too, where only white Guatemalans essentially go to the gym for the most part.
Interesting.
And so I'd go into the gym there, and it was, upper class Guatemalans, and I would think like, oh my God, here I am in my parents' home country, and I felt like kind of like a snob, like an American brat. Like I'm on a Stairmaster, and there are people like 1 mile from here who haven't eaten meat in the last 10 years because they can't afford it. So I wrestled a lot with those issues. But so I thought I'd read a piece from the very beginning of this essay, and it's called Gyms. And just to let you know, I'm starting off here in Guatemala. Again, I was living there when I was 28. I lived with a host family before moving into my own apartment, but here I'm still living with the host family. I missed sweating. I wanted to run. I was living in Guatemala for several months, and my host mother, Blanca, told me that if I jogged around the neighborhood, I would look like a crazy person. People don't really do that here, she said one Sunday morning as I tied the laces on my sneakers in the courtyard. Yes, they do, her husband Alejandro said. He explained that people in Guatemala exercised, but they usually did it very early in the morning when the city streets weren't as busy with cars and people. I tightened my laces and told them I'd be back in an hour or so. They stared in silence as I left the house. It was sunny and cool. I jogged slowly at first. Ah, yes, running. Then a whistle. Across the street, a man grabbed his dick and called, Bella, Bella. I quickened my pace. I felt that man's words all over my skin. Maybe running wasn't the best idea in the middle of the morning when the city was packed with slimy, dick-grabbing men. I switched to a power walk. I had to pay close attention to where I stepped. Dog poop, deep potholes, uneven sidewalks, cars, motorcycles, and enormous buses that pushed me up against buildings, threatening to run over my feet. All that made for a stressful walk instead of the soothing calorie burn I had been seeking. So the following week, I visited a couple of gyms, gimnasios, one of which was essentially a petri dish of germs in the form of 3 weight machines, 2 benches, and a skinny guy reading the newspaper at the front desk, while half a dozen men lifted weights and stared at their reflections in the rusted mirror. The second gimnasio consisted of a long, narrow room on the 3rd floor of a building in a neighborhood I would likely never find again, seeing as how there were no numbers or street names in that zone. Discouraged and desperate as ever, I needed to find a gym. It wouldn't be the first time I felt that particular angst in a foreign country. My obsession with gyms started with my introduction to dieting, and that started when I was a child. Diets were always something white women did, women my mother cleaned houses for in the wealthy suburbs. These women would take Dexatrim diet pills and sprinkle artificial sweetener from pink packets onto grapefruit halves. It was the 80s. They wore magenta headbands and leg warmers on their way to the gym. They carried water bottles. My mother, who came to this country from Guatemala weighing 100 pounds and like many immigrants, discovered that Big Macs cost less than a pack of vine-ripe tomatoes, gained 10, 20, then 30 pounds, eventually reaching nearly double her green card weight. She joined the new gym down the street from our house, Futura. The first time I went with her at the age of 12, I stepped past the racquetball room, where dripping with sweat men looked to be in great pain as their sneakers screeched loudly in the narrow space. I was scared. What if that small blue ball smacked them right in the face? And I was entirely unprepared for what I was about to see upstairs in the ladies' locker room. Never had I seen naked women in real life. The occasional sex scene in movies I wasn't supposed to watch, Dirty Dancing, White Men Can't Jump, revealed nude women's backs and chests, but never below the waist. The locker room ladies had nests between their legs. They had cellulite on pale thighs, dark rings around their middles where the fat sat. After that abrupt introduction to the female body, I began waiting for my mother in the carpeted hallway outside the locker room while she changed her clothes. Then I'd sit cross-legged in the corner of the workout studio, a pink notebook on my lap, writing stories about girls with spiral perms, while my mother stepped sideways and spun in front of the mirrored wall, along with a dozen other women wearing leotards. It looked fun. It didn't work. My mother eventually canceled her gym membership, but I, on the other hand, had barely turned page 1 of what would be a much-treaded path. I was an A student. My group of friends and I were the popular girls in our elementary school's 6th grade. I was great at calligraphy, and I had just made the chorus group. My friends and I would meet at one another's houses on Saturday afternoons and take curling irons to our hair and eyeshadow to our lids, trading jean jackets and vests. Sometimes we'd meet spiked-haired and samba-wearing boys at the movie theater, although none of us had an actual boyfriend. Then one day, everything changed. At school one day, I stood in line with my trapper keeper on my hip as usual. I wore jeans and a checkered sweater with my hair pulled into a thick side ponytail. The boy behind me was laughing. What was it? What had I missed? That was my first reaction, for I was always on the good side of a joke, on the side that the other classmates envied. The scrawny blonde boy, Peter M., continued to laugh. This time it trickled down the line as we waited for our teacher to give us a signal that it was time to move to the next classroom for science. What was it? Peter M. cleared his little pink throat. "You look like a soccer ball," he said. Immediately my face burned. The giggles I heard down the line fanned this heat, the horror and shame I felt in my body because of my body. Not long after that, I used money I'd earned from babysitting on the Jenny Garth's Body in Progress VHS tape. On its cover, the popular blonde actress leaned against a piano with a gray sheet draped over it. She wore a black sports bra and spandex shorts. Her shoulder-length hair was blown out and teased in a natural-looking way, and her red lipstick matched the color font used for the subtitle. Jenny Garth of Beverly Hills 90210 introduces her own personal fitness plan. I bought the tape because I actually believed that I could be transformed into a likable version of myself. The day after I bought the video, I jumped off the school bus and climbed the driveway to my house. I dug out the key we kept in a secret spot in the wicker blinds inside the front porch and opened the door. Then I sat on the living room couch while I played the tape in its entirety. I wanted to understand the sequence, study it before I completed it every day for the rest of my life. What did I wear to exercise? I don't remember owning any workout clothes. What would that mean for a 12-year-old anyway? Kids, even preteens, didn't work out. We played, or we did sports. For me, that meant half a dozen soccer seasons and one pathetic winter of Saturday mornings spent at a gymnastics class where I watched skinny girls flip and balance and tumble on bars and beams while I practiced somersaults on the blue mat. Jenny Garth's 50-minute workout video, I believed, would really work. My 5-foot body carried the evidence of years of unmonitored grade school snacks and endless bowls of sugary cereals and whole milk on weekend mornings, not to mention seconds and thirds of tres leches birthday cake and store-brand Neapolitan ice cream at family parties. At home, my sisters and I were never allowed to open cartons of orange juice, bags of chips, or packets of Kraft sliced cheese without our mother's permission. My mother kept a close eye on these glossy packaged items. In Guatemala, she and her 6 siblings ate tortillas and black beans most nights of the week. After school, our mother always called us from work. That's when we'd fire off our questions. Is it okay if we open the fruit punch? Please, can I open the cookies? Silence. Bueno, she'd say, but don't eat them all. For that, she'd yell, "What? I just bought those cookies. What do you girls think? Food is free?" So began the guilt. Under my bed or downstairs between the couch and the wall, I would hoard plastic cups full of Doritos, mugs full of rice, and the occasional bag of Cheetos. I vaguely understood that too much food made one fat. Back then, I had no notion of calories, or I didn't care, or at least I didn't think I cared. I'll stop there, but it's it's a long essay, and I take you to Vietnam and Nigeria and Guatemala, and you know, it's funny at times and sad at times, but vulnerable and honest. I just feel like that's part of my role as a writer, is to write into those hard truths and hopefully allow others to either see themselves reflected in the story or maybe gain a window into an experience that they haven't had.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think a lot of what you speak to in you're really giving us insight into what your what your experience was like, in those developmental years. And I think a lot of it will ring true for a lot of females, going through adolescence, and then the added piece of the cultural identity and and that a real significant awareness of your body being different, and having it then start to be called out, and thinking like, and it was really interesting, that Jenny Garth video that you talked about. I'm like, oh my gosh. And of course you're going to Jenny Garth, who's probably been thin her whole life, and she's got that ideal, like, blonde, thin thing going on. And then she's going to show you how to be that way.
Yeah.
She's going to teach you. If you do this every day for the rest of your life, you will look just like her. Right?
Yeah.
Isn't that the message that we get with all those diet products and the exercise programs, which is so problematic, right? For girls, but everyone really. I mean, and what I will say is we're getting to a place of equality in this, and not that it's becoming better for females, but that it's getting worse for males. Like, so many more messages around males and body image and needing to get products to look a certain way, and a lot of times it's about musculature and just a different kind of messaging, but still problematic. But thank you for sharing, and I do appreciate. I mean, you really are opening yourself up in this book, and I can't wait to read the whole thing. It just made me it left me wanting more. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to get this.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for saying that. It's I needed to include like the younger self, that age, because that's where things really kicked off. And things got a lot worse before they got better, for a variety of reasons. But that was like the genesis, like that age, 11, 12 years old, like everything kind of coming to a head, with my mother joining the gym, which was a luxury, like my aunts didn't join gyms, like, so it was like a big step for her. I think it was her seeking to be American in a lot of ways too. Like, I could do that. I could go to the gym.
Trying to assimilate. Like, that was one of the things she saw that other and how old was she when she moved here?
She was 18.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I think now that I'm reflecting on it, of course it was about her wanting to maybe be like the women whose houses she cleaned for. Like, she saw them with workout clothes and headbands and Walkmans, and she was like, well, I want to do that too, because she was a big, like, my mom is very like, if they could do it, I could do it, so I think it came from maybe a good space. And but then it just kind of like lit the match for me in terms of like, oh.
And it's interesting because you spoke a little bit, or you alluded to some food insecurity, that kind of the your mom wanting you to have all these foods that were so American, right? And certainly, as you really painted a nice picture of the 80s, which I so relate to and appreciate. And then but the kind of those are the foods that you gravitate to, right? Those are the foods that are appealing to kids, and particularly if they're more novel. And then there was a piece of, it sounds like a little bit of some food insecurity there too.
It's very interesting, like, because she didn't have a range of food growing up. It was like, there was scarcity there, so I think already she came to the United States as this like with this mindset of scarcity, and then there's so much food here, it's like, and you can get food you're able to eat a variety of food and not pay that much. I mean, food is, you know what I'm saying? And so but she always clipped coupons, and she always, like, I remember we used to go to the store, like Farm Stand, remember Farm Stand? And we'd be in line forever because she just like had all these coupons, and they'd be beeping and scanning. But it was her way of allowing us to have the name brand food. We wanted what our friends had. We wanted the Capri Sun and the Rice Krispie treat.
Another way you could fit in, right?
Yeah. And exactly. And so, but she was really interesting with food. Like she still is, you know, like she would buy it, but again, we had to ask her to open it. And then to this day, her food is full. I think it's deeply connected to her childhood and not having enough.
You know, as you're talking, I'm thinking of my grandparents who grew up through the Depression and the
Yeah.
kind of some of the values they passed on to, in particular my dad, because my grandmother was one of 16 and his parents were a little bit older, but there was definitely scarcity and this sense of, you know, you need to finish your plate. Like,
Yeah.
do not take this for granted. Which I think is interesting to just think about how those food experiences get passed down from one generation to the next, or maybe, you know, we decide we want to do it completely different and then we kind of push it to the other end of the pendulum and then it comes back a little bit. And it is fascinating, but so much gets passed down from one generation to the next.
Yeah.
And I think it's great to have a cultural perspective on that and to kind of open up the lens and say, oh, that's where that came from. That makes so much sense.
Yeah, the cultural piece, I feel like, is so intertwined. And once I did start kind of engaging in these conversations and reading about it, it was hard to find resources that kind of acknowledged and validated the cultural piece, because it was always like, well, it wasn't always, it was that race and culture was never mentioned. It was like food is neutral or something. And it's like, no, it's not. It's so, and especially, you know, Guatemalan cuisine, like it's not that it's actually really good. Like there's so many whole foods, you know, beets and
it's well-rounded, lots of produce, right?
It's the processed food that, like, it's ironic because I've learned that some studies have been done, like of Mayan teenagers, so from Guatemala, how they traditionally, like their body type, it's like lean body mass, like, but then they studied this group of teenagers who moved to Florida from Guatemala, and they gained a ton of weight over the years, and a lot of it was because they weren't eating whole foods. It wasn't like their natural diet. It was all processed, you know, just like what's in this mystery meat, you know. But aside from that, there's so much love and emotion in food, you know, and culturally. Like I remember like doing Weight Watchers one year, of like several years, but you know, one year I did it, and I had just started it, and so I was like kind of getting into all the like the lingo and the like points and stuff. And I went to, my mom was working for a family in Wayland, cleaning their house, and I had to drop something off or pick something up. And I was home on a college break, I think, and I drove there to this like gargantuan house, and she answered the door, and I came in, and whatever, I picked up whatever, and then I was about to leave, and she handed me this like warm bundle, this mass in aluminum foil, and it was this like huge bagel with cream cheese, and it was toasted. I know, and it was like in this big aluminum. It was like, and she was like, "Toma, here, you know, to take with you." And I was like, I can't. That's like 35 points, you know? And she was like, what? She like could not understand what I was saying.
She's like, it's food and it's warm and it tastes good.
And you're my daughter and it's snowing outside and you're home from college. Like, take it. You know, so it's like, I just learned that like that's her love language.
Well,
know?
It's interesting that you mentioned this because it's reminding me. So one of our dietitians is from the Dominican, and she talked a lot about that. Like, it's offensive if you don't eat the food.
Yes.
Like there's like, it's love and you're not accepting the love. You're not.
Yep.
And so that kind of speaks to the challenges around identity. I think it's kind of this like almost like this. You know, it's a little bit more challenging. I think here in Western culture, we really value individuality, right? And the individual and having, you know, your own personal power and boundaries. And I think in other cultures, it's which I love, the family is a family identity, and the kind of the connection with family is such a bigger piece of identity, and how and it's more of a community identity versus an individual. And I think that kind of language around food is so much a part of that. And I think that it's some in the work I do, I know a lot of the conversations we have is like, how are you setting, kind of loving boundaries around food, and like kind of how are you able to let people, kindly decline when your body's had enough, or if you don't like a particular food for whatever reason, and then also get enough too. So it's this really interesting, but I can see culturally there's another whole layer there where, oh wow, like this could really like, and that's important for me to know as a dietitian, and for anyone in our field to understand that that other cultures don't have the values are a little bit different around individuality and family, and how the that language in food. It's so palpable.
Yeah. No, there's so much. I mean, there's the food, and then even thinking about exercise as I just remember like in college telling my mom that I was going to the gym at school, and it was really great. I went to Connecticut College, great college, and the gym was amazing. And I remember telling her that I went with my one friend. I won't name her just because, and then so my mom said, "Ay, qué pecado." She was like, "How? She doesn't need to work out." And I was like,
"But you do."
"But I do, yeah." And just the way she said it, like "qué pecado," like she was like doing something like offensive or like just it was like she couldn't believe it. She's like, "But why?" I'm like, there are so many benefits to working out that have nothing to do.
So many reasons people move their bodies and exercise that have nothing to do with changing shape. But isn't that interesting that that's the message that we receive so predominantly, that this is about changing shape, changing size, and that's really important.
Right. Yeah. And that's changed a lot. And then in Guatemala, being at that gym, it was so eye-opening, because like I've learned to sort of avoid numbers over the years. Like that's a tool in my toolkit, it's just kind of like, I don't need that data to be like sending me off on a, and so when I was there, I had to have like an assessment, and everything there is in centimeters, not inches, and it's just like all these little differences. And the woman,
lot more centimeters than inches, right?
yeah. And the woman who was doing my intake, she was like measuring everything, and there was like this one moment that she measured my neck, and we were like face to face. And I know, and it was like I could like smell her lip gloss. I remember it so vividly, and she was like, and there was like this little pull, and it just like, for me, that moment was like so telling. Like my mind spun, like, what if my parents had never moved from Guatemala? Who would I be in Guatemala? Would I be as obsessed with working out and watching what I eat and everything? Would I be comfortable in my skin? Just what it set me off. And I don't know. I like the essay form for this reason. You don't have to start writing with an answer. In fact, you write to figure it out. And
absolutely, it absolutely is a growing process, for sure. And as you were talking, it reminded me, interestingly, of an experience I had during my internship, where part of my training was we had to learn how to do these body measurements, which I don't use in my practice, and I would not recommend using. And I hope they take. I don't know. I hope they've since taken this out. But I had to literally go home with my roommates who were all in my internship with me, and we had to take each other's measurements. We would use skin calipers and like use the little like the tape measure, and that was really hard. That was really hard. I remember the feeling like, oh, gee, she's got a better number than me. And is that going to make her a better dietitian? Like back in the way that I was, this was 20 plus years ago. And my work has transformed. Like I've done a total 180. I look at it completely different. And I respect that we all have different genetics, and our bodies are all supposed to be different. Yeah. And our cultural heritage has a lot to do with that. Yes. But it is, and I appreciate you saying that about the numbers, because I found that to be true too for so many people I work with, and myself too. They're not helpful, and it's a means of comparison and quantifying something that is, it's really our bodies are our vessels to live in, and and really meant to be sensed and experienced, not measured, and and quantified.
Absolutely. I love, what you're doing, the great work you're doing, because it's so critical to have alternatives to the norm, right? Or I guess just the way that we have been, this kind of the norm.
It is. Yeah.
So that's good. And
Well,
then, yeah.
I was just going to say how, like, this morning when I was talking to a group of students, in their kind of early mid adolescence, and we were just talking about how oftentimes, diet culture or feeling bad about your body seems like a rite of passage. It's like, okay, this is just a natural part of what you adopt as you become an adolescent. Yep. Fixation on your body, starting to play around with dieting behaviors, and like, and also just kind of what I love about it is they're like be able to impart this awareness to them, like about this is what naming what diet culture is, like showing them how it appears in their daily life on social media and like, advertisements, and then having them like, take this initiative and want to change their culture within their school, but then and even then broader from beyond that, and like creating some leadership opportunities within them, and like what can you do as an individual when your friends sharing something about their experience in their body. And I love having those conversations because it's so inspirational. Like I really have a lot of faith in this next generation. And they even started talking about intersectionality and the LGBTQIA community and how it all, I just love that we're having these conversations.
Yes, absolutely. And getting those narratives out there, because then it might encourage others to feel less alone and to share theirs. I feel like there's more, the downside is like there's more media now. There's so more images flooding you, but there are more conversations, I guess.
Absolutely. And I think the one great thing I found is with social media, you get to kind of curate your feed, right? You can pick and choose which people you follow, and you can get a lot of, you can get exposure to a lot of diverse bodies and images of people. And so it's not this, you're not subject to just the marketers want to give you that is intended to make you feel bad, so you then buy the product.
Yeah, totally. And like imagine how powerful that is, like for those teens to feel empowered to change that narrative or to seek out a different narrative from within the media, and then how that can sidestep and manifest in other parts of their lives.
Absolutely.
Like literature, film, like, it can be in the sciences, like all these kinds of like, I'm thinking of like women in STEM, like it just, it translates to other areas of your life. And I found that like when I started to shift how I viewed exercise to like what I could gain versus what I was losing. And
how it could energize you and give you a sense of personal power. And
oh my God. And the mental health benefits, I feel like no one ever told me, like, like what endorphins were and dopamine, like, I'm like, this is free. Like this is like I don't need a prescription for this.
But unfortunately, if you're not fueling your body appropriately, what happens is that you might feel a little bit better during exercise, but then you're exhausted outside of it. So you don't get that same boost that you ideally would with moving your body. So that's
I really used to think that calorie counting or like the base, right? It was like limbo. Like how low can you go? Like
a challenge, like a personal challenge, right? So many people set that as an achievement, a sense of accomplishment. And it was interesting. So there was a TED talk, and I feel bad, I'm forgetting the woman's name. She's a coach, but she was talking about how by the age of, I feel like I want to say 8, like I think at least 8 or 10, it might be 8, that I have the statistics right here. 57% of 9 to 10-year-old girls felt better about themselves with their dieting. 80% of 10-year-old girls have been on a diet. 10 years old. Wow. 10 years old. And then you think about how it becomes so commonplace, particularly for females in our culture. And she really highlights, and if you look it up, I think it's about the need to kill the diet culture. It's like a TED talk. And she just talks about how we're actually losing like 50% of our population, because if you think about it, when you're so fixated on food and your weight and dieting, you're not engaged in your life in as meaningful a way, and you're not like, you know, she kind of parallels it to like, would you want to fly to the moon on a NASA mission with 50% of the people fixated on their diets and coming, you know, weighing their food and weighing their bodies and like, you're not like having their full brains and, you know,
Yes,
in the game.
right.
I thought that was a really interesting analogy and something that like, I think now that we're like shining a light on it, like we've named it, I think we can now do something about it. But
yeah.
So
No.
I do, before we go, I want to make sure I like, you know, give you a chance to talk a little more about your book, where you can get it, like what, you know, kind of like what, you know, what else you want to share about it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I know, I still can't believe it. It's like today's pub day. I'm so excited about it. You can buy it anywhere books are sold. So,
Okay.
you know, it's at Barnes & Noble, your local independent bookstore. If you buy it through Word on the Street in Marlboro, then I can pop over and sign copies. Also at Porter Square Books and Brookline Booksmith.
Okay.
I'm signing copies there too. And the Silver Unicorn.
Awesome.
Yeah, and it's just exciting. There's another virtual event we're doing tonight, and all the info is on my website, which is jenniferdeleoneauthor.com.
Okay.
And here I am on Instagram, same handle on Twitter, although I'm not as active on there. And I just am so excited to keep these conversations going.
Yeah.
And it's funny because people are like, you know, who have read the book are like, I'm reading White Space, and there are a lot of issues of immigration and identity, mother-daughter relationships, language, you know, teaching my son Spanish, and then all this. And then the Jim's essay is kind of tucked in there, you know, but it engages with all of the other themes just in a different way. And I was feeling very nervous, you know, writing it, publishing it, but I feel like that's, again, that same fear is the excitement kind of outweighs it. And yeah, the cultural piece is huge. I could see myself writing more about this in the future.
I love how you talk about the growth through the writing process and like just putting this out, maybe a way for you to let go a little bit more of what sounds like some shame you held on to for around some of these things, or kind of like, and as you're doing that, you're also helping so many people who are probably going through similar experiences. But I imagine right now, like you're probably, were you able to sleep last night? Or?
The last like 3 weeks, I haven't been able to sleep. Oh my God, it's just, it's so great, you know. But it's been a lot of work again, it's all intertwined and interconnected. Like the same trajectory of growing into myself to feel like I can write the stories that I want to write, as well as like growing into myself is like, I want to, you know, feel comfortable in my body and see exercise as a joy and not punishment, and food as fuel, and also joy, you know, versus like, you know, just kind of like shame, you know, guilt. It's been a lot of work, you know, and I have an amazing therapist.
They always help. Yeah,
she's awesome. And I like can't even tell you how much work we've done over the years, and it's so valuable. It's so valuable.
Well, that's probably what brought you here, and contributes to your ability to be able to put this out in the world. You know, and really step into your light. And and not be shameful anymore, and not be afraid of it, and go figure, I got an essay out of it, you know. It's like someone recently shared, it was probably a therapist friend of mine, that kind of the concept that shame can't live in the light, which I love.
Oh, I love that. Shame can't live in the light.
When you put it out there, it's like there's no room for it, right? Because you just, you're connecting, and the vulnerability allows you to connect deeper with other people around you. I think that's so great. So I am so looking forward to reading this book. I can't wait. I loved your first one, and it's completely different.
Totally.
So wonderful. I love that you've got this variability as an author. So thank you so much for taking the time to be here. And I'm going to have you share that email with me. I'm sorry, is it the email address or the website?
Website, yeah.
Website, and I will post it in the description.
Oh,
And
great.
I'm going to put this up on IG or IGTV, and I will probably put it on YouTube too, if that's okay with you, to share on Facebook, because I can't share from Instagram to Facebook.
Right.
So anyone that missed it can catch it on here or YouTube. So thank you. I look forward to catching up with you again soon, and
Absolutely.
and seeing you know, how this book does. I'm sure, I know it'll do well, but just kind of hearing more about it. All right.
No,
Awesome.
totally.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend.
Bye,
Good
you
luck
too.
with everything.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.